Hey, what's going on everyone? Today we have the tier list for patch 15.8, which is going to be one of the final patches of the set. So if you want to make that last minute climb, I highly recommend checking out this video. But essentially right now, Fast 9 is still pretty good. I'd say it's one of the things you're going to be aiming for the most. There wasn't too big of a patch. Fast 9 is still very good, and Malzahar also is going to be one of the top 3 comps you're going to be playing right now. Reason why is because, well, with Fast 9, Lee Sin did get nerfed a little bit, but he's still really strong. Braum, also a really solid addition to Fast 9 with the Bastion comp, so you just have too many options with Fast 9, and towards the end of the set, if they ever make leveling kind of a safe thing to do, people are just much better at Fast 9 than they are previously because everyone's so familiar with the set. So that's why Fast 9 is good right now. In the A tier, we have a couple of random like 4-cost comps like Star Guardian and Soul Fighter are both options there. If you want to play Reroll, Katarina and Bastion Xayah are pretty solid options. And then there's also Mentor, Ryze, Volibear, and Crystal, Gambit, Ashe. Those are, I believe, 9 comps that I think you should be paying attention to this patch. And if you just focus on these 9, especially if you're like trying to do a last minute climb, maybe you only focus on like 3 or 4 of these comps because that's all you need to do to climb. You don't need to know every single comp, but I'm going to cover how to play each and every one of these comps, when to go for them, how to go for them, and all these little details that a lot of other guides out there might not cover. But in case you are curious, this video is brought to you by Riot Games. We'll be unboxing some Riftbound stuff in my other channel, so check that out if you're interested in card games or Riftbound in general. But yeah, we're going to check out what's in this box and also open up a few packs. But starting up at the top, we have Juggernaut Fast 9. So here we have the Lee Sin and Braum that I was talking about before, but the other carries of the comp are going to be the other legendaries, which are going to be Twisted Fate and Xayah. Typically in Fast 9, you play around all your legendaries, but it is a little tricky to play. You need to kind of get lucky to get a Fast 9, but when you do get those Fast 9 games, make the most of them. It's like we get one chance in life, and if I was born with Iron Brain, then that kind of sucks, right? But if I was born with Challenger Brain, then okay, that's pretty good, right? And getting a Fast 9 game kind of feels like that. It's like being born a Challenger, right? I don't know if that's a thing, but just go with it, you know? When you do get super econ, when you're able to win streak in the early game for no reason without investing into win streaking, those are going to be the games where you can go Fast 9, and the Juggernaut comp and the Bastion comp are 2 options that you absolutely have to go when you get that to make the most of those advantages, because the earlier you get to level 9, the more legendaries there are available because less people take them, and the earlier you go, the faster you stabilize so that you don't bleed out and have maybe 3 lives instead of having 1 or 2. So that's why it's really important to really take advantage of those games, because in these Fast 9 games, these are the win out comps. So 1st or 8th, but if you have a good start, you'll be maybe like 1st or 6th, maybe 1st or 5th. And then depending on what front line you're running, you're just going to be playing those frontliners plus legendaries. So in this case, we have the Juggernauts. You just put in all the Juggernauts into your team planner. In case you wanted to get a quick way to do that, click into the comp and then click this button over here. This will just copy the team code for you. But you could also just manually input all the Juggernauts. I think I had like a sample team planner comp that just has all the Juggernauts because I played Juggernaut Flex a lot in this set. Like some patches I played Ashe a bunch, some patches I played Kog'Maw or Smolder with Juggernauts. There's a lot of random comps you could play with like the random tank front lines, but you could also do it with Bastion here. You just put all the Bastions in, and then when you roll down late in the game, once you hit level 9, you just buy all the yellow units, all the legendary units, and then you just make your team out of that. It's very effective, and you don't have to have the exact legendaries you see on this board, because obviously legendaries are hard to get, but at least like try to get most of them, and obviously mix and match them if you have to. I'd say the only 2 critical ones in the Juggernaut comp are going to be the Lee Sin and the Twisted Fate. Lee Sin is needed because, well, he is the Juggernaut after all, legendary, so he's absolutely mandatory. And Twisted Fate's good because he ramps up with Rage Blade with your super front line. So what you do is you pick up Noxus Trap on Twisted Fate because that gives you all the utility you need in your team imaginable. And then on Lee Sin, Unflinching or Warming Up is pretty solid. And then you throw all the melee bruiser items onto Lee Sin. In the early game, you want Nefiri to hold on to those items. She's really good at that. For the Twisted Fate items, you could use Gnar, because Gnar Mundo is a very popular combo whenever you're playing Juggernaut. If we scroll down to the Bastion comp, we have Braum mandatory, and then either Twisted Fate or Seraphine as a carry. Both are needed if you want to do like a super first, but having one of them is okay. You just want whoever you itemized. Lucky for you, Seraphine can use any type of item, and Twisted Fate, well, he kind of uses the same builds in both comps, so that's really nice to have. But same thing with Twisted Fate, Noxus Trap is absolutely bonkers busted, and then Seraphine Mage is really good. And I'm actually really surprised that they did not remove the Mage, because it's so good on her, especially in this team comp, because again, your team stalls out, and when she casts her ability twice, it usually kills most things in the game. You could do a lot of stuff with Seraphine though, like one popular item I see is like Archangels is pretty good on her because you have the Bastion frontline, it allows her to charge up. But honestly, you don't even need that. If you have like Hat and Deathblade or just anything that gives a ton of raw stats, it's enough to kill even without the stacking. That's how powerful the Mage power up kind of is with this build. But the good news is with this Bastion Fast 9 and the Juggernaut Fast 9 though is obviously they have the same leveling pattern, but they also share the same items on like the primary carry, which is Lee Sin. He uses the melee bruiser items, and then Braum uses the melee bruiser items down here. They are a little bit different, don't get me wrong. Like the Infinity Edge on Lee Sin is really, really good, and you don't really want that on your Braum, but in terms of like lifesteal items, in terms of stuff like Sterex, those items are really useful on both champions, so there's a ton of overlap. And then of course the 4-cost tank, Leona for Bastion, Set for Juggernauts, both are just very easy options to just throw all your tank items on no matter what you're doing. But that kind of covers both the Fast 9 comps. It's a win out comp, so only play it when you have good starts for it, or if you have super heavy econ. One of the comps you can use to stabilize if you get a bad start is something like Malzahar Heavyweights because it's a reroll comp. Reroll comps are generally easier to stabilize with. 3 cost is a little bit more difficult. I'd say like 2 cost is like the perfect threshold to just play from a lose streak, but 3 cost it's doable also. Depends how you stabilize, depends on the pace of the game, but here you focus on Malzahar and Darius. Those are going to be your 2 fruits or powered up units, and then you have Poppy as your tank. So when you play this, I personally would only play it with Blighting Jewel or with Double Trouble. So I have like the 2 team comps over here, but we'll go over the standard version first with the heavyweights, and then we'll go over the Double Trouble version right after. But both of those conditions make this comp really, really good. So if you ever get artifact items, take it and try to get Blighting Jewel. Malzahar can use a bunch of other stuff also, like some of the mana regen ones are good, and obviously any AP ones are usable on him, but Blighting Jewel is by far the best. I've heard like multiple Blighting Jewels is even crazier. I haven't done it personally, I haven't seen it personally, but my friend told me it's really, really good. With this Malzahar build though, you want to take Noxious Trap. If you haven't noticed yet, Noxious Trap is OP, like all the 3 comps we went over already, all take it. And it's just because it saves you a ton of items, so if you ever have like a super applier or a super spreader, such as Twisted Fate or Malzahar, you just get a ton of utility for your team, both in terms of shredding and anti-heal. But yeah, in my notes here, we have Double Trouble makes this the best comp in the game. But to do the normal or standard version, you just rush level 7, roll down for 3 cost units. You want to stabilize with a 2-star Malzahar and 2-star Darius, and then econ back up, and then slow roll until you get both of them 3-star. If you ever get econ augments or reroll augments, such as Rolling for Days, Pandora's Bench, Team Builder, things like that, it helps a lot in accelerating the spike for this comp. And last but not least, I want to talk about Double Trouble because in my notes down here, I say Double Trouble makes this the best comp in the game. So this is a little bit different. You want to still do Malzahar and Darius, but you could also throw in a Rammus there. What this ends up doing is that it gives you 2 tanks in Rammus and Darius, and then Malzahar just does the same thing. They just get like a ton of stats because of the whole Double Trouble bonus. For the other units in your comp, you run Syndra and Zac. That way you get the Wraith bonus and you also get Prodigy, but obviously Syndra can be any Prodigy unit in the game. If you have Double Trouble, you still want Noxious Trap on Malzahar, but on Rammus you could use either Bestest Boy or Tankzilla just to get him a little bit beefier. But honestly, the whole power up on Rammus like doesn't really matter too much. You should use all your rerolls to get Noxious Trap on Malzahar. If you do have Double Trouble, the only difference you want to make to your playstyle is you want to find 4 copies of Malzahar, Rammus, and Darius on stage 4-1. So instead of like doing your level 7 stabilization roll down and getting 2 stars, you need 4 copies. That way you have a 2-star of Malzahar and a 1-star of Malzahar, and the same thing with Rammus and Darius. And then you get the Double Trouble bonus for like your whole team. So obviously on the 4-1 roll down, you want to aim to get like pretty much this exact board, but you could be missing one of them. It's okay. So you could do like maybe 2 Malzahars. I'd say that's mandatory, and then either 2 Rammus or 2 Darius, like one or the other. That way you could still fit in a heavyweight unit and a prodigy, because obviously we have 8 units here, and at level 7 you normally just play 7 units. Obviously if you find the 4th copy of every champion, great, you could play all of them, but it's not the end of the world to be missing one of them like right at the start of stage 4-1, but obviously it just helps if you have the extra gold to just roll for it and then play it. But this comp really works out well because it's the strongest stage 4 board in the game, and stage 4 is so important because if you win all those rounds, essentially every round you win in stage 4, at least from like a theoretical standpoint, it's like adding one placement to your game, because the HP swings at that stage is just that critical. But for item priority for this double trouble build, prioritize the 3 Malzahar items and then the 3 Rammus items, and then just put whatever leftovers you have on Darius. And yeah, it's pretty simple to play. Once you 3-star your units, you get an extra copy because of the double trouble bonus effect, and then you just play the extra copy and have fun with your game. By the way, with Double Trouble, you pretty much always need a reroll augment to complement it, because if not, it's really hard to hit everything 3-star. And obviously you get a big power spike when you get that, and it's even more important to get that power spike in Double Trouble, because if you don't get it, you're pretty much missing a part of your augment. So that's going to be the main differences between the standard and Double Trouble version. Like the item prio is a little different. Like obviously in the standard version, you want to focus on Malzahar and Darius items first and then tank items later. But in the Double Trouble version, Rammus is going to be a bit more important. But this is one of those conditional comps that does win out a lot, but you could also play the normal version from a lose streak, just because whenever you lose streak, you have a lot of econ to kind of hit all your 3-cost units. And also when you are lose streaking, it's safer to play reroll comps. Next build up we have is the Star Guardian build. This build changed up a little bit. So we had like some different versions in the past, but this one's pretty solid. Like I pretty much would only play it with Star Guardian emblem. You're free to do whatever you want. Like people have done it without it and done well, but unless I get some super insane augments such as like quality over quantity, or like something with a ton of items, buried treasures, or one of those vertical comp augments such as climb the ladder or little buddies, I'd pretty much try to stay away from this comp unless I literally have an emblem to start the game with, because it just makes it a lot easier to play. And you know me, I like to turn my brain off when I play sometimes and just have the game autoplay for me. And having the emblem or one of those augments definitely helps out a lot. So nothing too complicated is going on with this comp though. We have like the Jinx in the backline at 4 cost, Poppy frontline as 4 cost as well. So you just want to rush level 8 because that's the best level to roll for them. And then the itemization is pretty standard. On Jinx, you want Shojin plus 2 items, i.e. I think is preferred. And then for Poppy, pretty much any tank items will do. For power-ups, Poppy really likes stuff like Body Change and Unstoppable. Jinx can use stuff like Gathering Force and Super Mega. Those are kind of fun to try out. And if you do have an emblem that I was talking about, like a lot of units can use a Star Guardian emblem, like pretty much anyone can, but Braum, K'Sante, and Kabuko are pretty strong candidates for it. And unlike the Star Guardian version in the start of the set, where you'd want to play as many Star Guardians as possible, this one's a little bit more flexible. You don't need to go like 8 or 9 Star Guardian. In fact, like the version we have here, we just run 7, and you more so just take advantage of the quality units that you have at higher cost levels, such as K'Sante and Braum, and Kabuko's nice for the mentor buff and heavyweight, than you would for playing something like an Ahri. But very simple comp to play. I have a bunch of gameplay videos over here, and also like check out the Teamfight.lol Explorer tool. Pretty nice to kind of look at the data and see what builds work or don't work. But I also have like really long write-ups on the how to play section on the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta, so check that out and bookmark it if you have not already. Next comp up we have is Battle Academia Katarina reroll. This is a 2-cost reroll comp, so the first one of that we're going over this patch so far. Nothing too much has changed with this build since last time. All you have to do is roll at level 6, get Katarina 2-star, and ideally play it with an artifact or a radiant item, and you are more than good to go. And then you just need to make sure you have good power-ups. Apart from that, like there really isn't anything too deep about this comp. Very easy to play. So if you like reroll and you like easy comps, like definitely check this one out. Get a scaling power-up on Katarina, use all your rerolls in the early game to try to get one, and then get Unstoppable for Rakan. The one thing I will say about this comp that's pretty important is that the items are pretty strict for Katarina, so if you're not getting one of the insane artifacts, you pretty much need Edge of Night, and then Hand of Justice is mandatory, and Guard Breaker is like pretty much the best option there. Like I wouldn't really replace it with anything else. So as you're looking at the carousels and how to approach them, prioritize items over gold, because it really is just that important, and 2-cost reroll isn't that expensive of a team comp, so I would prioritize getting perfect items over getting like 1 or 2 extra gold. Luckily, Rakan's items don't really matter too much, and then you obviously do want the utility items on Yuumi, so as long as you have like Void Staff Morello or Void Staff Red buff, the items on Rakan and Yuumi can almost be anything. But obviously, like the main power of this comp comes from Katarina and focusing as much power on her as possible, and Radiance and Artifacts are kind of the only way to do that. So try to only play this comp if you do meet those conditions, but there are going to be some games where you're forced to 2-cost reroll, and sometimes you just get a lot of Katarinas. In that case, you still can play it with just regular items. Next build up we have is Soul Fighter Samira. This build got updated as well, similar to the Star Guardian comp, because the way you play this has evolved over the course of the set. So here we have Samira and Set as the 2 4-cost units that we're concentrating on, and then obviously Soul Fighters have the late game power of like the Gwen. They kind of took powers out of the deep verticals, so you are able to do stuff like running 6 Soul Fighter instead of going 8 every single game. So in this version we have Volibear, Samira, Set, and Gwen all with items. So if you ever get an item augment, obviously it's really nice to get everyone powered up, because Volibear and Braum complement this team really well, because Braum gets Bastion with Xin Zhao, Volibear gets Edgelord with Samira. They're both 4 and 5 cost units, and they share a trait together, which is Luchador, and it makes the team planner look really nice because you get perfect synergies on the left hand side. Obviously that doesn't actually mean anything, but it's kind of fun to look at. So if you have psychological problems like I do, it kind of gives a calming effect. But for power-ups, we want On the Edge or Shadow Clone for Samira, and then for Set, Round 2 or Standalone is really nice. If you do have Standalone, a setup like this can work really well, and you could also run stuff like Stone Plate. But pretty much play this only if you have Soul Fighter Opener or Tournament Favorites Augment, or if you have a lot of swords and gloves early. If not, I would kind of hold off on it. If you do not have Emblem, play this version here. If you do have Emblem, play this version over here. 8 Soul Fighters obviously still is good. You just don't want to play it without getting an emblem, because you then end up running too many crappy units. For example, Viego and Kalista are not really contributing that much to your team, so playing both of them to get to 8 sacrifices way too much power, whereas if you have the emblem, you only need to run one of them, and then getting 8 makes a lot more sense. Also, another reason why Set is kind of in the front line is because it gives time for your Soul Fighters to kind of scale up throughout the fight. So that's kind of why it's positioned that way also. But the most important thing to do with this build is to make sure you get 3 items Samira, 3 items Set as quickly as possible. It matters more than other team comps. For example, if we looked at Star Guardian, like obviously, yeah, having 3 item Poppy, 3 item Jinx is pretty important. But if you have like some of the utility items on your Xayah or something like that, or whoever's holding it at the time, or if you have a Thieves Glove on Seraphine, you can kind of get away with it a lot more than something like Soul Fighter, because the issue with Soul Fighter is that your early boards in Stage 4 are really dependent on having fully itemized Set and Samira. I know some games when you roll down you don't even have Set or Samira and you have to play something else, like maybe you're still playing Kalista, but getting those 3 items on those 2 units is super duper important. Next comp up, we have this Crystal Gambit Ashe. This is the 5 Crystal Gambit version with Kraken Slayers. Essentially, this comp focuses on getting to 5 Crystal Gambit and then win streaking with it. The way to do that is to spike really hard on stage 4-1 and 4-2. So in order to do that, you need to do a fast 8 in order to get pretty good Ashe odds, and then after that you have to kind of flex your front line. So what does that mean? It means as you roll down, you want to play around like a lot of the other 4-cost tanks. You know how sometimes when we do our level 8 roll down, we see 4-costs that don't belong in our comp, but you're like, do I buy it? Do I not buy it? Is it a waste of gold? Is it a waste of time to click it? Well, in this case, it's pretty worth your time to click a lot of those units. So you could play around Cassante, Leona, Set, or Swain during your roll down. And in terms of strength, like Swain 3 would be the best, obviously. But you're probably not going to get that at that point in time. But stuff like Cassante 2, Leona 2, and Set 2 also work even if they don't show up in this team comp. You just have to adjust your board a little bit. So if you have Cassante, you want to play Protectors with Janna. If you have Set, you want to play it with Vi, because that you get Juggernaut that way. And if you get Leona, then you need another Bastion unit. So here we have Braum, but you might not have Braum. And then if you have Leona, you need a Bastion unit, so that's going to be where Swain comes in. So there are a lot of built-in synergies with Crystal Gambit with random frontline tanks, so that's really nice to know. But yeah, just get any of them 2-star. Ideally 2-star Ashe, doesn't happen all the time, and kind of roll with it there. With Ashe, you want the double Kraken plus Rage Blade. You could also use Fury Break as a cheese with Kayle. That way you get a lot of attack speed on your Ashe. And then for Ashe herself, like Desperado, Bludgeoner, Sky Piercer, if you don't have penetration yet, are all pretty good options. But honestly, like a lot of different things do work on Ashe. You don't need to be too picky with your power-ups here compared to other comps at least. Like obviously power-ups are still important. It's still good to have like the quote-unquote like best power-ups, but it depends on your item builds, depends on your augments, and the main power of this build is getting a lot of loot from the Crystal Gambit trait, not so much on getting like perfect everything. In the super late game, you could cap around Braum, Lee Sin, and Zyra, ideally 2-stars obviously, and whenever you play 3 legendaries, that's often like a really good sign that this comp can win out. Is this as good as the Fast 9 comps that we saw in the S tier? Yes, in the late game, but no in terms of consistency. So the Fast 9 comps, they can pretty much be hit a lot of times if you meet the right conditions, but this one's a lot more difficult to execute because you need all the Crystal Gambit units, and you also need to stabilize during stage 4 and then actually get good cash outs from your 5 Crystal Gambit traits. So it's a little trickier, but like the overall power is the same, but it's harder to kind of get there. Next build up, we have Bastion Xayah reroll. This is just a simple 2-cost reroll comp, really good for stabilizing, and yeah, you just play all the Bastion units plus Xayah and throw in some Star Guardians if you got them. So Xayah, you just use the classic Rage Blade Kraken Slayer combo. 3rd item Giant Slayer is pretty nice, but honestly it could be pretty flexible. For Shen, get utility on him. I've really been liking Body Change a lot in this patch, so that's why you see Body Change as one of the recommended power-ups for like most of these builds for the tanks. But for Xayah, I like something like Double Strike, it's pretty good. But really simple comp, just 2-cost reroll, do it at level 6, stabilize. You know the deal already if you've been watching me for this long. If you haven't, I recommend subscribing below and also checking out the website bunnymuffins.lol for guides and teamfight.lol for data. But again, pretty simple. Play all the Bastions, roll at level 6, get Xayah 3, get Shen 3, level up, throw in more Bastions, throw in some Star Guardians, and yeah, that's pretty much what your team's going to be. This is probably one of the easiest comps there is, just because it's very basic and standard, so I'd say the only thing you need to be worried about when you are playing this is getting a lot of bows, because Xayah cannot operate without bows. She needs 3 of them, or at least 2, because every game you should have at least Rage Blade and Kraken Slayer. Next build up we have is Mentor Ryze Volibear, which is going to be a 4-cost comp. So we have 3 4-costs we want to focus on in this build. It's going to be Jarvan, Volibear, and Ryze. And this comp is really good with a Mech opener. So essentially you play Mech and then you go into Mentors. And to do that, you build a lot of damage items. So Ryze obviously wants the AP items. You use Lucian as an item holder for that. And then Volibear wants kind of like the AD item. So you can use Nefiri for that. You typically run Aatrox whenever you play with Mighty Mech early on in the game. So getting Nefiri and Aatrox as like 2 Juggernauts as a combo to pair with that is pretty good. So for your bruiser items, she's going to be a pretty decent holder. If not, if you started with IE and maybe you don't have Sterix yet, then obviously you could use any backline attack damage carry. Maybe something like a Senna, like IE Guardbreaker, like pretty usable on her. I know she's Executioner already, but honestly the crit items on Executioner are good no matter what. And I believe last week we already did a data check on Ryze and we saw that Jeweled Gauntlet is really good even though we already have Executioner active. You do get bonus crit whenever you already have the effect make your ability crit, so that's kind of why it still is pretty decent on them. So never consider it kind of like a waste of an item. But this comp is really good because it allows you to play around multiple carries if you have enough items. So if you ever get like buried treasures or something like that, or you know those random prismatic augments which give you like 2.5 items, like those are actually like pretty decent on this comp just because it helps you kind of gear everyone up. But sample late game boards kind of look like this. You have like IE, Volibear, AP Ryze, and then mana item Jarvan. Nothing too complicated going on there. Utility items are nice in this comp. Like Udyr gives you burn already when you have 4 Mentor in. So you just need to make sure you have Magic Penetration and Armor Shred. So you could do that through Even Shroud. You could do Last Whisper on Volibear. You could do like Void Staff. Like I know Senna's an attack damage champion, but you just need Void Staff on anyone. And Ionic Spark is such an awful item that you don't even want to build it. And also you need every rod on your Ryze anyways. So it's kind of hard to build. So that's kind of why it's listed out this way. Like again, I know Senna's an attack damage champion, but you just need Magic Penetration from like any form possible. But yeah, for power-ups, Ryze can use Efficient, you can use Icebender, Sky Piercer is good if you don't have enough items for the Shred items, and then Volibear really likes using Serious Slam. Always keep your Ryze and Volibear together because the whole point of this build is to focus down the same target and then refresh your Volibear slams. Kind of like how I'm going to slam that like button because this video was so helpful. But that's pretty much the juice of this comp. Like I make a note of that down here, like single target damage is really good in this. And yeah, you just fast state into this, play all the units listed out here. It's pretty much just like Mentor plus Executioner plus Mech, and that's going to be pretty solid for your team. Like pretty decent comp. But just to sum up at the top here, like Fast 9 gonna be a go-to for like most of your win streak games. Like if you're not doing that, then I don't know what you're doing. And then if you ever get Double Trouble, just hard force this Malzahar build. It's like so good and so powerful and so great. And the Malzahar with the Noxious Trap thing, like Noxious Trap is just so broken. Like all 3 of these comps use Noxious Trap or Noxious Poison. I forget what it's called, but it just saves you 3 items. So if you have a power up that gives you 3 items, that's pretty good, right? Like most of the other power-ups, they give like 1 item, maybe 2, I don't know, but like this one gives 3. So that's why these comps are broken, because you just get bonus items on your whole team when you build them, right? But after that, like the A tier is still pretty solid. Lots of 4 cost options, lots of reroll options, both at 2 and 3 cost. So I'd say like this is a pretty balanced patch. I believe this is the one they are playing the World Championships on, so that would be interesting to watch if you are into that. I think it's next week, the tournament. But let me know any questions you have down in the comments below or in the Discord. And thanks again to Riot Games for sponsoring this video. And head on over to my other channel. I'll leave a link down in the description below if you want to see the whole unboxing for Riftbound. So I'll see you all there.